if you're in consulting, chances are you're a friendly person, you're charismatic, but how do you ensure that they can actually back it up? And I think part of it is, first off, make sure that the consultant you're talking to has experience in your hotel segment. You probably want to find somebody who has practical experience in that area. When I was a GM and such, I've worked with consultants who I didn't see the ROI, but it was food and beverage consulting where it's tens of thousands of dollars a year, and they're gonna guarantee X number of hours a month to work on these projects. And at the end of the day, I'm like, so what did you guys do?
You know that 63 million hospitality workers lost their jobs during the pandemic. And though half of those went back to work in the couple of years following, big portion of our industry either changed careers or became hospitality consultants. Today's episode, I'm talking to Bill Muench from AG Hospitality to discuss what is the real value of hiring a hotel consultant to help managing the business, either for a project or in the long term. We discussed how to select the right consultant for your hotel, what is the process of working with a consultant, and how to avoid the downfalls that may occur in any business relationship. Tune in and learn something new with Schillering today. Thank you for listening to the Schillering Hub Talking Hospitality podcast. Have you ever worked a hospitality consultant? If you haven't, because most of the consultants that I speak to were just a general manager like you and have a long career and can understand a lot about the business and give you a third eye to your business and maybe put some inputs that can help you. How can we work as hoteliers with consultants and understand the value behind it? For this, I invited Bill Muench to speak to us. Bill Muench. No, Muench. How does Muench?
Bench, like bench or friend. Don't worry, everybody does the same.
Just get the surname wrong from every guest. It's just horrible. I try, I practice, but I can't get it right. Bill, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan.
Like, you've been working before getting to the consultant world. I saw that you worked like 10 years at Fairmont Hotels before getting into consulting. So I would get to ask, what was the crazy young Bill thinking when got to the hospitality world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, basically my background is actually in education. So I have a degree in history. I've got a minor in what I call astrophysics for poets, which was, astrophysics for non-scientists, kind of a diverse educational background. But by the time I was done with my secondary schooling, I was kind of burnt out. I had always intended to become a teacher, maybe like a 9th, 10th grade global studies teacher for history and such. But I was just burnt out on the educational system. Not that I followed the system. I was just pushing hard through it, and I was ready to do something else. So I got into sales, just kind of fell into it. And over time, I realized I really enjoyed establishing relationships with people, making friendships essentially. But at that point in my life, I wasn't really comfortable then saying, oh, and how many units would you like to buy? It didn't feel right. So in my mid-20s, I grew up in upstate New York, Western New York. In my mid-20s, I literally sold everything I owned. I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii. I lived in a hostel for a month for, I think it was like $21 a night or something with a shared bathroom and the whole thing. Had a little vacation, and I started looking for work in a hotel. So I started out as a bellman, just worked my way through. Thankfully, Fairmont brought me on. They were very, very supportive, particularly my first boss, Keith Siebeneller, who is in Denver now with Kimpton as a general manager at a beautiful hotel from what I've seen. He was very supportive of, again, educating me and allowing me to learn everything I could learn. So, yeah, I was like, I like people. I just don't like selling them things. So Bellman's a great way in. You get to meet lots of people, make sure they're comfortable, make sure they have everything what they need. You see them around the resort for a week or something. How's everything going? It was a really good experience. So I did that, moved around with Fairmont. I've worked all over the country and just kind of worked my way up through the ranks, learned everything I could, kind of finished my operational career as a general manager and then asset manager on the independent side of things. And yeah, it's been really interesting. And that's one of the things about our consultancy is everybody that I work with, they come from operations. It's not, I went to hospitality school. I did 6 months at a front desk and now I'm a hotelier. It's like, no, they were in there for 5, 6, 10 years, area directors, like really, really skilled and great people. That's kind of how we did that. And yeah, then there was COVID. So
What was after that?
yep. So yeah, and then I decided to get into consulting. When I was in operations, I had the opportunity to work as a consultant for my current owners because basically they were opening a great new property called Castle Hot Springs here in Arizona, and they needed help. And I was like, oh, I'd love to help with it, but I'm kind of busy with my day job. So they're like, well, we'll bring you on as a consultant. We'll, keep that separate and such. And that was kind of my first foray into consulting. And then over time, I did little projects here and there. And then during COVID, I was lucky enough to not be furloughed. I was still working. I was still doing things. And I was like, I've got little kids, the hospitality lifestyle is tough. And I decided to make the jump and go into consulting full time.
Because it's amazing, right? You actually didn't even start from the low ranks. You start as a backpacker, going to a backpack and staying there, like putting all your life savings into spending some time and catching the job that you could catch. I love these stories. Like I did the same in New Zealand. I started washing dishes because that's what I could do, right? But loving to learn how to interact, and you can see from another level, you can see how the management and the leadership is actually treating the ones that are just carrying the weight there without getting all the glamour. And I love to see when people come from that background. But what I want to ask is, what is your favorite story to share when you are with your friends in the pub about hotels?
My favorite story from hotels, like a lot of us in the hospitality industry, you go to a conference, you get a few drinks, and then the stories about all the bad stuff that you see comes out for the good ones. Actually, it is one of my favorite things. So when I was a bellman, there was this family that came to stay. I wish I could remember their name. Like I might be able to figure it out if I went back through my computer files or something. But it was, mom, dad, 2 kids. One of the sons was there, and it wasn't over a break period. It was like during the normal school term. It was during the normal school year. And I was talking to them on the way up to their room. Here's where the restaurants are. What are your plans? Your usual stuff. And the kid I'm thinking he was about 9 or 10 at the time. He goes, I've got to write a report while I'm here about like, because we were in Hawaii. What did I learn about Hawaii? Like, what are some fun facts about Hawaii and all that? I'm just like, man, like I love history. I love culture. I love all that sort of thing. But I was like, to have to do that on your trip to Hawaii, like, that's not cool. You're going to have to want to be educator. I'm like, I don't know if I do that ticket. So, I work a PM shift. I went home and I just I literally like typed up a list of stuff for the kid. I was like, here's who Captain Cook was. Like, here's some facts about the volcano. Here's a thing about Honu, like the green sea turtles and such. And the next day I went back and I like slipped it under the door and I was like, you might want to rewrite this. But like, here's your homework, kid. It was like, enjoy your time in Hawaii. So later I think it was the mom came by. And she's like, we got your note. That was so sweet. Like, he was so happy that he can just have fun here and not have to like do research and like write papers and that sort of thing. So, for good stuff, that's one that always sticks in my head because the job of us in hospitality, and maybe that's like an unusual example, me doing some kids' homework essentially. But, our job is to take care of people. Our job is to make people happy. Our job is to make them feel welcome. And there's so many different ways you can do that in hospitality, whether it's touching the table when you're at a restaurant, whether it's, running out to get some medicine for somebody or whatever it is. There's so many ways to do it. And that's, I like taking care of people. That's why I got into hospitality. So.
Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the show and if you are learning something new today, please consider following the show, subscribe to our channel, or leave us a review. It helps us to help more people through the podcast, and it would mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we're back on the chat.
And you could even have like signed and say like, that's why I'm working in a hotel and gave up on being a teacher. It burned me out with homework.
Right. Yeah.
And now, Bill, now you own AG Hospitality, right? So would you be able to define AG Hospitality in 1 minute to our audience?
In 1 minute. Okay, I'll do my best. So we're a consultancy that focuses on independent luxury hotels primarily. We do, like all consultants, we do a lot of things because we have a lot of different experiences. But what we focus on a lot is kind of the confluence of operations and technology and what I call client-side project management. So if you want to implement a new system, lots of times what will happen, especially at independent hotels who have less staff, less resources. Okay, GM, I want to install a new property management system. The GM goes, okay, hey, front desk manager, we have a call every week. Here's all these workbooks you need to fill out. Here's all this other stuff you need to do. And meanwhile, the front desk manager says, well, I have guests, I have staff, I have, I'm doing my normal job. And that's where we can come in and basically be a part of your team working with the third party to ensure that things are done correctly, that they're done timely, that they're done efficiently, and it doesn't impact guest service or the daily operations. And then on top of that, I say we offer advisory services, but really, if you're a client of ours and you want to talk about some idea you have, we just jump on the phone and we talk about it. And that doesn't cost anything. You're a client, you're a partner, you're a friend, so it's like, we're thinking about purchasing. Great. I know somebody that's great with purchasing. They could probably save you a lot of money because you're independent and no one's giving you a deal on your soap. Well, these guys, doesn't cost you anything. It's going to drop your soap cost by 20%, and it's not like, back in the 80s and 90s, and probably still today, the lawyers would have the button where as soon as you get on the phone call, you hit the button and it starts the clock and then you get a bill for 12 minutes of, small talk or whatever. That's something else we do. Just utilize our experience to help you have the best operations to provide the best guest experience.
Sum up the podcast already with one introduction on what consulting really means, right? Like, as you said, we are a friend, we are here, part of the team, we are here to help. But the goal of the podcast today is really to try to educate our hoteliers on understanding the real value and the processes, because my feeling, and sometimes they may not say that out and loud, but I think that they are a bit afraid of a consultant coming in and what is going to how, if I need someone else to help to do my job. So that's are the questions that I thought that they may have, and I'm passing them to you, and we can have a little chat and discussion to see from your experience, from the people you spoke to, if you can shine some light into the hotelier's brain. And probably the first would ask is why I would hire a consultant if I have my team available to share with their knowledge, I hire them. So why would anyone hire a consultant?
Yeah, absolutely. So, part of it is really just the number of hours in the day, right? You hired a GM to operate the property, to oversee the daily operations, to review the financials, to do all those things. They hired a front desk manager to take care of the guests, or a housekeeping manager to clean the rooms, or an F&B manager to run the restaurant. And they should be doing, in my opinion, they should be doing that. If you've ever been involved in a big technology project, there's a lot of homework, essentially. Going back to the education side of things, but there's a lot of homework. Before you even fill out workbooks and that sort of thing, you have to determine the architecture of the system. So, if you're switching, we do a lot of work with Oracle and Opera, Oracle Hospitality and Opera Cloud. You have to figure out all your transaction codes. And you might have hundreds of transaction codes, and they're really good with giving you kind of like some baseline template stuff. But if you're an independent hotel, chances are you're a bit unique. If you're a boutique hotel, you're unique. You're not, no offense to select service, you're not a Holiday Inn Express where you could just drop on a street corner and everything is the same as the next Holiday Inn Express. There's customization required. So you have to figure all that out to make sure that everything that you're programming and doing, how is that going to impact operations? How is that going to impact the clarity of a guest folio if you don't have the right transaction codes? And that's just like one teeny tiny little example. So that's where we can come in as subject matter experts and say, well, you should set your transaction codes like this, your room types like this, your AR system like this, your restaurant postings, all these different things. And meanwhile, your front desk manager, F&B manager, general manager is doing their job. They're taking care of guests. And then on top of that, we've got, well, I kind of touched on, it's the time, it's the subject matter expertise. It's also the relationships and the knowledge we have that might be outside the scope of that particular project, where again, well, you want to do this thing. Well, how is that going to impact this other thing? And if you're not an expert in that, you could make a choice that seems perfectly legitimate, and you don't realize what the effect is it might have on something else. We've worked with clients in the past where, they wanted to open a hotel. They didn't really have much hotel experience, and they were advised by some consultants who I think they had they were coming from a place of like genuinely wanting to help. But because they weren't particularly technically savvy, they were signing up for or contracting with software providers that weren't going to do what they wanted, or it didn't work the way they thought. And then, okay, well, you're stuck with these guys for a 36-month term. And meanwhile, every single day, it's having a negative impact on your frontline staff. It's making their life harder. So if you bring us in early in the project, first of all, we can help advise you on what is the best software system for you. Like I always use an example of texting. There's dozens and dozens of guest texting solutions out there. And while they're similar, they text, there are also a lot of differences. So, how is your front desk manager, your general manager supposed to know which is the one for me without looking at a lot of them? Or are you just going to choose, well, this one looks slick. This one's got great marketing, And that's where we can come in and we can say, well, hey, these are the 5 that we recommend. Number 1 is good because of this, but it's got this drawback. Number 2 is better in this other area, and help pare it down based upon actual experience, and not just like the Google algorithm says that I should use this one, And that's what it is. So, if you bring us in early, we can help with software. And when I say we, I mean consultants in general, not specifically us. But, we can help with software selection. We can help with scoping out the project. Honestly, lots of times we can get you slightly better pricing too, because we've got relationships with these companies. We work with a lot of different software companies, and sometimes they want to partner with us. And, it's like, well, I don't always want to partner because I don't want there to ever appear to be an appearance of bias. Like, oh, I'm recommending this company because they're gonna kick me back some money or something like that. So whenever we do partner with people, we almost always say, well, instead of kicking back money, give them preferred pricing. So pass what you were going to give me along to the end user, so they get better pricing, and it makes using us worth their while. So, we can help with that. And then the actual implementation, we can go to those meetings and we'll just ask, hey, how do you do this at your property? We'll have a quick call with your team, but we can basically take a lot of it off your plate and streamline the whole process so that, again, you can focus on your guests. And I think that's something that we all at AG Hospitality understand, because we're all operational. It's like I go and I train front desk agents. I was a front desk agent, supervisor, or manager for years. Like, I know how guests can be. I know how challenging it can be. I'm not removed. I'm not the person that came out of hospitality school and never worked at a front desk. I understand, and my goal is to make your life as an agent easier, because I've been there. Everything you've dealt with, I've dealt with. Trust me.
Oh, that's like a beautiful mission to have, when you know that you can really decrease the stress of any process, that anything new when it comes to processes, it's going to cause you stress, regardless if it's a great process or a bad process. It will cause you stress, and it's great to have someone that can guide the team there. However, have you faced some hoteliers that were actually afraid of having a consultant to jump in?
Not that they've admitted to. And this part I am just going to talk about us and our company. That's not the goal of this whole thing, but, just us as an example. We're easy to work with. When I was a bellman, my opinion was always, if you take care of people and you provide good service, the money will follow. Like, the money is never the primary motivator. It's a pleasant side effect. So for us, when we talk to potential clients and such, we are very flexible on our billing, on our arrangements. Like maybe you want a retainer, maybe you want to do it by project, maybe you just want to do it hourly. It's like, we'll come to agreement that fits your needs. So at the end of the day, you can justify to your owners why we hired this consultant. You're going to see a great result. And sorry about that. You're going to see thought I had it all turned off. You're going to see a great result, and it's going to be affordable. And I think that even people who might have been a little bit hesitant at the beginning, once they start working with a good consultant, working with their team, you see the benefits, because there's other things like for the advisory side of things, you might not know you need something or know that something could be helpful and make a positive impact either upon your operations or your bottom line. And because our job is to get out there and to, go to the trade shows, see what all the new things are, learn about all these things, we can come to you and we can say like, hey, I came across this. I think it might be useful for you. And if you want to talk about it, let's just jump on a call. And if you're not, no worries. It's just something we saw. Like, so for example, I go to High Tech every year. That's like my one show I always get to. And I'm going to do a little plug here, if that's okay. I met some gentlemen from a company called Core Park out of California, and I was a valet, and they do valet software, so I understand like the workflow of a valet and why certain things are important and certain things aren't. And we've got all these new valet systems that are coming out, and a lot of them are great, but some of them I don't think are efficient because they're trying to be too techy, when sometimes like paper tickets are okay. If you've got 100 cars coming in, paper tickets are fine. But my point with this being, I came across this, I talked to them, chatted with them a bit, got to learn about it. I was like, hey, as an ex-valet, like this is a good system. I have a friend who runs a valet company. And I was like, I know you guys have been looking for something, but because you use so much volume, you haven't found, you're like, you should talk to these guys. It might be worth your time. And now they're implementing it at one property, hopefully a couple more, and we'll see how it works. They didn't ask to do that. I was just out there looking for things that, can help people I know, and I bring it back, and I'm not implementing it. They're doing it all themselves, but at the end of the day, I help them with something, and that makes me happy. So
very important here, because you said that like consultants are going to fairs, they are getting exposed to technology, they are getting exposed to different clients as well, seeing the challenge from different angles. Maybe a hotel has a very similar challenge than your hotel, but they are facing that challenge from different points of views, and you come in and say like, look, I've seen this and there is another solution. However, you said something very important, said that after we started working with them and seeing that's a good consultant, right? And I think that this is a crucial part here, that how that hoteliers can understand if a consultant is a good consultant, is the right fit for that hotel.
Yeah, and that's key, because, if you're in consulting, chances are you're a friendly person, you're charismatic, all these other things, but how do you ensure that they can actually back it up? And I think part of it is, first off, make sure that the consultant you're talking to has experience in your hotel segment, for example. So like I said, we work primarily with independent luxury hotels, because while I started my career, first 10 years or so was with Fairmont, which is, it's a big brand. This was prior to the Accor acquisition and such. After that, I was working in independent hotels, and they were on the luxury side. I was opening them. I was doing all these other things. If somebody came to me and they said, hey, we're opening, and again, I'm picking on poor IHG here, if they're saying, hey, we're opening a Holiday Inn Express, I would say, I mean, if you want to just chat about stuff, I'm happy to talk to you, but that's not my specialty. Like, sure, I can figure things out, but I don't know everything that goes into being a franchisee and your corporate requirements, everything else. You probably want to find somebody who has practical experience in that area. And I would probably decline unless they're like, no, we're trying to do this other thing, or we can make all our own choices. So, we're trying to expand what we're doing. So it's not just your standard Holiday Inn Express. And, it might be a good fit. So, there's that. There's also, I've worked, when I was a GM and such, I've worked with consultants who I didn't see the ROI. And it was, I did not sign the agreement. I came into it, but it was, food and beverage consulting, where it's tens of thousands of dollars a year, and they're gonna guarantee X number of hours a month to work on these projects. And at the end of the day, I'm like, so what did you guys do? I know they were sending you tens of thousands of dollars a month, but what did you do for it? So, making sure that you're working with a consultant whose billing terms are going to match what you're looking for. And also that there's accountability. So, let's say you have a retainer with somebody, which sometimes that's the best way to do it, like hands down. If it's a very open-ended project, I'll usually suggest a retainer because one, I need to dedicate, my workload to that. But at the end of the retainer, they should be sending you a timesheet showing that this is what I did this month. And not just like, thanks for the check. Here, here's your next invoice. So making sure that their billing options match what you want. Like, because we do retainers, we do per project, we do per hour, we do ongoing support where you only pay for it if you use it, and that sort of thing. Because again, it's like you do good work, the money will follow. I don't need to lock you into some agreement where you're paying me for nothing. Like that's definitely not my goal.
Agreements, like the first thing that I would think as a hotelier now and considering working for consultant is what's the whole process, right, of working. So you mentioned now some agreements that I haven't heard other speaking about, like about the retainer and showing exactly what you work for during that time, that month. So what is the normal process that hoteliers should be looking at when hiring a consultant that they probably think that this is the right one for me?
Yeah. I think the first one is definitely setting expectations. What do you as a hotelier expect from AG Hospitality or whomever as consultants? What is our scope? How many hours do we each expect that this will take? And then from the consultant side saying like, hey, we're going to bill it, say the last day of every month. I'm going to attach a timesheet so you know what we're doing. It's going to be detailed. It's going to be well communicated, just to make sure that, again, there's that transparency. And it's not just like, oh yeah, it's $5,000 this month and it just says consulting and there's no detail. Well, what did I consult on this month? And making sure we do all that. And then, the process itself. So once you've set all those things up, you need to stick to it. If you say you're going to have a weekly check-in from both sides, you need to commit to that. And we get it. You're still in operations. Stuff comes up. If you need to move things around, that's fine. But there should always be open and clear communication. And then depending on what the project is, once you kick it off, we as consultants need to, again, keep you informed. Okay, this is what we've been doing this week. This is where we are in the project. This is our next step. So, saying, hey, we were on a progress call this week with a third party. They had a question about this. We were able to answer most of them. But how do you do it at this property? And getting that information. So again, it's a very open line of communication. You should never really be asking, I know they're billing me, but what are they doing? That's not going to engender trust. And then hopefully, our goal is once a project is done to, even if there's nothing specific going on, keeping the lines of communication open. So for example, I mentioned that we do support services and such. It's primarily for Opera Cloud, Oracle Hospitality. And we don't charge anything let me rephrase this. We only charge you for the support that you use. We are here either way. So for example, we have some clients who don't use our support services at all. They don't get a bill at all, but we're still here if they need it. So if they have a new agent that comes in and they need to know how to do something, they can enter a ticket with us and we'll answer it. And then at the end of the month, you'll get a bill for whatever you use. Maybe it's only 15 minutes, And then there's other people who, because they don't have, say, like power user on property or like a property champion, as they say, somebody that's not as familiar with the system, they utilize us more. But maybe next month they won't, and then you don't pay. So instead of locking people into a support contract where every month you're paying us, even if you never use us, we're here whether you need us or not, essentially, which a lot of people have found very helpful.
The implementation that you just have to check out to see if things are working, right? How can the hotelier really, or the consultant themselves, really check if what was asked, it's working and it's being done by both sides?
So that's, again, where the consultant needs to be really hands-on. And that's why we refer to it as client-side project management. We are a part of your team. So we ideally are there from scoping, contracting, system design, implementation, training, and into support. So we're utilizing your system. We are in there on a regular basis, making sure that things are working correctly. To give you an example, last week, we were out at a client's property over in the Midwest, and we did a transition to, new property management system. And we flew back on Friday, and we knew that Saturday morning there would be staff working who were not as experienced as the staff during the week. So set my alarm early for, Central Time, woke up at 6 a.m., which is when I knew they'd be rolling the day because it wasn't a 24 operation. They rolled the day in the morning. And I just logged in remotely. I didn't even tell them I was doing it. I was like, did they roll the day? Did any errors get thrown? Did they open any tickets? Because even though we're, on a different time zone, we needed to be available. So that's the sort of thing where if we do a project, even if you don't ask us to, we're kind of going to be like peeking over the fence. We're going to be looking in, we're going to be checking in and just making sure everything's going okay. And we're not charging for it. It's just part of, being a good partner, essentially. So yeah, it's not sure you're involved is the biggest thing. Even after you're done, making sure you're involved, making sure you're available, and holding people accountable. If you implement a system and there's a department that doesn't want to use it, the GM might not know that. And we have to say, for the good of the project, hey, just to let you know, we're not seeing a lot of utilization by this person, this department, this whatever. If they need additional training, let us know. If there's some questions, let us know. But we want to make sure that the entire project is successful.
An element as well, right? It's not only systems, not only processes, but there's always that human element of, I don't want that here, or I don't want to change anything. How do you guys work when you face that typical hospitality sense that we've always done this way and it works?
So when I first started out with Fairmont, the property shall remain nameless. It's not hard to figure out if you look at my LinkedIn. But, it had been open for about 20 years, and there were a lot of people who had been there since the day it opened for 20 years. And I, being a new young guy, I was like, well, why do we do it this way? Why do we do it that way? Like, this way would be better. I was that guy. I was the kid that sat in the front of the class. Like, I'm that guy. And the response I often got was, well, we do it that way because we've always done it that way. And like that answer has always rubbed me the wrong way. I don't care who it comes from. I'm just like, that's like when my kids say, well, why can't I? I say, because. It's like, that's not really an answer. So, part of it is you have to keep emotions out of it, and you have to make a logical argument or a logical case for why we should change it. What is the benefit that you're going to see? How is it going to impact your guest experience or your bottom line or your expenses or whatever it is? And as consultants, you can't get emotionally involved. You can't let emotions get into it. You just have to say, like, hey, this is why we believe it. In the end, it's up to the decision maker to make that decision. But if that decision maker has brought us in to do the project, chances are they're supporting it. So it's other people in the organization that have the issues. And, we're not going to get involved in HR issues and that sort of thing. We could just make the case for, like, this is why we're doing this. This is why we were brought in. And if you need assistance, let us know, but this is how we're doing it. And from an operational standpoint, we don't know all the ins and outs of your operation at every single property. We're going to ask a lot of questions because we need to understand it. Maybe we think you do something one way, but you do it a different way. And when you point that out, thank you for educating us on that. Thank you for telling us so that we can change things and we can switch it to make sure it matches your operations. So there's always a lot of that as well. And usually, not all the time, but usually when you have a good back and forth relationship and you're talking about it and you're listening to people, they'll be like, okay, these folks they're respectful. They're listening to us. They're trying to make our life better. They're not just coming in to make our life harder. Because again, like, we got into this because we like helping people. That's why we're in hospitality. We're not doing it to make your life, even if you can't always see it.
But you like when you say this, I can see that there is that barrier. The hospitality is known by not wanting to change a lot or by not wanting to adapt to new technologies because it works the way that we set up. Now things are kind of changing, right? Like hoteliers are being more open because it's necessary. They understand now that the world is moving, changing way too fast for them just to sit behind and watch and say like, oh, okay, we're going to figure it out this next year or so. But when it comes to risks of talking to consultants and including them in your team, you just said now that sometimes, there is some issues, there are some human issues that it's HR problem, but you are there and you end up being in the middle of that, right? So are there any risks that you see when working with consultants, and how can the hoteliers mitigate from it?
Sure. I mean, the risk is what you said. Some people don't like change, and some people, it's going to be hard to get them on board. It's very rare that we aren't able to get everybody on board because, again, for our team, it's not a matter of emotions. We're not going to get into a yelling match with somebody because they're like, I don't like this. And we're like, but it's, we're not going to have that type of negativity on our side. So we're usually able to get everybody on board. And generally speaking, well, I shouldn't say generally speaking, we're implementing solutions that will work better 99% of the time. Like maybe your old system did things this way, and your new system does it like a little bit different. Okay, well, is the 50% in improvements outweighed by the 1% of it's different? It's like, if you can save all this time, but this other thing takes 2 more minutes, but it saves you an hour, I would personally save an hour and change the process, even if this other thing's going to cost 2 more minutes. So, we just need to essentially get everybody on board. In the end, though, if you have people that are not on board, that's up to the property to figure out how to handle it. What do you do with that person if they're just refusing to go along with the decision the management group or the general manager, whomever, has made? And that's where it comes down to, like, hey, this is the way we're going. We'd love for you to be on board, but in the end, it's your choice. That's my GM coming out. I'm sorry, but yeah.
How seeing then the hotelier, the return on investment on the consultant? Because you just, in the beginning, you start talking about this, but let's get actually to a way for them to see in details.
Yeah. And I'll be totally upfront. Sometimes it's hard to measure the ROI. It's not like, hey, we're buying this soap and now we're going to buy this soap that's cheaper. So, my cost went down. Like, here's the numbers, here's the invoices. But for example, well, let's talk about purchasing. We don't really deal with purchasing and food purchasing and all that directly. But again, we have those relationships, we have those connections where maybe you don't have any sort of purchasing program or something. So by bringing us on to work on one thing, we're able to say, hey, by the way, you should talk to this purchasing consortia. I think they could save you a lot of money. So it's like, maybe the thing that we're doing doesn't have a direct measurable impact, but the other things that we bring to the table do. Certain other things, there is a measurable impact. Maybe your current process, your current system, it takes you an hour to do something. And then the new system that we put into place, it takes you 15 minutes. Well, if you want to run productivity reports through HR or have people track it or something, you can see like, okay, well, we just saved 45 minutes a day times 365 days a year, yada, 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 yada. There's other measurable ways, again, kind of going back to expenses. There's a lot of legacy software providers out there who shall remain nameless, who have very stringent agreements, who, in my opinion, charge way, way too much for their services compared to a lot of people who are newer to the market, who started their company on like a SaaS platform and are very affordable. So like, for example, booking engines and distribution and such, it used to be there were kind of only a couple really good options, like really full featured options. There were some more stripped down ones for smaller properties and, select service and such. But like, if you were a big luxury property, you wanted basically one of 3 who shall remain nameless providers, and they're expensive. But now there are a lot of other people who can do everything that they can do, all the important stuff they can do for a tenth of the cost. One of our clients, again, it's not something they asked us to do, but we're looking at it. And I said one day, like, hey, what are you paying for your reservations every month? Because a lot of these systems, it's a per reservation charge. It might be like $6 or $7 a reservation to come through your booking engine. They sent me the invoice and it was like $15,000 a month that they're paying just in booking charges. I said, okay, what if I could get that down to $1,000 a month? Yeah, that would be good. And you can, because there's other people out there. But again, because people don't know what they don't know. This is what we've always had. This is where we're going to stick with, and where we can come in as consultants is say like, hey, just let you know there are these other options out there that can do everything you want to do and are much more affordable. So that's another thing that we do is we just say like, hey, you can save money here, you can save money there. Hopefully you'll have us help with the implementation so that, we'll make a couple bucks. But in the end, again, it's about providing the best experience, the best service, the best pricing, the best everything for our clients. And then, the money will come after. I'm not worried about, well, I'm only going to tell you this if you pay me. It's like, I'm going to tell you, and then hopefully you'll have me help.
And now that we touched that about the new players in the market coming in, that maybe consultants can to get out of the big marketing, the big newsletters that you're receiving with the big names that will charge all that money, but that's the only thing you know. And now we're going to the future where a lot of these solutions are coming for a tenth of the price. As you said, AI gets to the mix and things get to start very integrated and softwares start to open the APIs and partnering up in different ways. What changes that you are seeing around the industry that you think that hoteliers should be aware of and even consultants should be giving that ideas to?
So there's a couple things. You mentioned AI. Everyone talks about AI. AI it really is world changing. It's insane with what it can do right now. Like I've got ChatGPT 4.0, like the subscription for the extra smart one. And just for kicks the other day, I just had a conversation with Chat and I asked it to name itself and I asked it opinions on things and questions and technical questions and all this stuff. And the sort of things it can throw back is just, it's honestly mind blowing compared to even just talking to your, I'm not going to say the A word because I have an Amazon voice assistant in my office and I don't want it talking to me while I'm talking to you. But, compared to what you'd get out of that. But I think that something that people need to really be careful for, especially in the hospitality industry, is there's a lot of companies throwing around the AI word where it's not that. It's really advanced algorithms. It's only as good as what you put into it. And a lot of these AI systems, unless you do so much work on the front end to load in the data, load in the parameters and all that, it's not going to get you what you want. Now, that being said, some of the conversational AI that's coming out, like as people dig more into ChatGPT 4.0 and, some of these other things where it's truly conversational AI, that'll make a big difference because one of my goals when I was in operations, I always used to joke with people, I want to make things so efficient that my front desk agents are bored and they're looking for guests to talk to. That they aren't sitting there thinking, oh, I still need to get through my PM checklist. I need to check arrivals. I need to make sure that the notes are actually in the specials and like all this kind of busy work that we've always had to do. When AI gets to the point when people don't have to do that because it's smart enough to say, if you put in, your web comments field when you're booking your special request, hey, I really need a rollaway. Well, most PMS systems won't actually put that into, say, a trace or special or something actionable. And then someone has to read through all the comments to find it. When AI is at the point where it reads those comments, then it puts in the actionable data and then cuts down so much on all this busy work that, say, front desk agents need to do. Like that's going to be a game changer, and I hope that the hotels won't then take that and say, well, we're so much more efficient. We're laying off Sally or something. I hope they'll say we still need the human element, but the AI can help us on the back end. It can help us be prepared. Or it's not going to say, well, we're just going to have a kiosk that can talk to you, and we don't need front desk agents. Hospitality is very much about the human element, and I'm hoping that it won't. People's quest for efficiency and profit won't take away that human aspect of hospitality. But yeah, I mean, AI is a huge part of it, no doubt. Some of the other things that are going on is, we've got all these new people and we have all these properties that have been around for a long time that are locked into old contracts. Like if your contract is coming up on whatever, your property management system, your distribution, your booking, your hotel operational system for guest requests, sorry to all my partners out there who sell these things, but don't just sign the renewal like 6 months out. Talk to a consultant. Doesn't have to be me, to talk to a consultant, talk to people who go to these trade shows, talk to experts, listen to podcasts. What else is out there that could offer a better experience at a cheaper price as opposed to just signing that renewal. Something that I've done with some of our clients where we've been able to generate these big savings. It's like, okay, you're saving $10,000 a month, but my request to you is that you spend $1,000 a month to add this other thing that will continue to improve either your employee experience, your guest experience, whatever it is. So it's like, yeah, you're going to save all this, but add in this other thing that's going to make it better. And then when we save some more, add in this other thing that's going to make it better, or change this procedure or something like that. Like, don't just take it all as profit. Like, yeah, you're going to have more profits, but you can also spend money on other things to continue to improve the experience across the board. I think that's super important. So,
question now, just as a discussion, you said that you hope that the human element it doesn't come out of the hotel industry, because hospitality, it is a human element, regardless if it is in the hospitality industry or out. I can be hospitable at home with my guests without charging anyone for it. But the question is, what do you believe that the hotel industry will keep the element of hospitality moving forward? Or do you think that the STRs, the short-term rentals, will start to include a little bit of hospitality that will kind of differentiate the whole way of we see the industry?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think that on the what I'll refer to as the traditional lodging side of things, I think that the higher end properties, the more luxury, upper upscale, super luxury, all that, they're going to keep the human element, because if you're paying $5,000 a night to go to Amangiri or something like that, you don't want to get checked in by a robot. You don't necessarily want a little and the hospitality robots are cool. Like there's a company here in my town who did a demo at their office. It was super cool. But like, you don't want a robot delivering your in-room dining. You want somebody in a nice uniform with a smile who can make sure you have everything and takes all the pressure off of you. Whereas with some of these technological solutions, the guest is a user. Like, there's stuff that they have to do. And if there's an issue, they need to figure out how to solve it. Whereas opposed to if there's a human involved, the human solves it for you. Like, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the support, the hospitality, the not having to worry about things. So I think that the upper upscale and so on up, I think they'll keep the human element as much as they can. They might supplement it with things like, instead of having a towel delivery robot, they might have a vacuuming robot or a mopping robot or something where you don't have to pay a guy to vacuum all your hallways, but in the middle of the day when everyone's out, you've got your super Roomba that's, cleaning your hallways. I do think that some of the more select service options, they're going to really lean into AI in order to maximize profit margins. And honestly, people that are paying less ideally expect less. We know it's not always the case, but it's like maybe some of these select services can add services using technology that they won't be able to afford otherwise if they had to pay a person. So maybe they can do in-room dining because they just bought a robot and they already have a food and beverage outlet. They just couldn't afford to, do in-room dining. So instead, they'll buy a robot. The restaurant will just put the food in the robot and it'll run up to your room, and the guests will be fine with that because they don't need to leave. And you're not trying to staff, a whole in-room dining department. And then the other question about short-term rentals, I mean, I'm very much of two minds about short-term rentals and what's going to happen. I up until about a year ago, I lived in Sedona, Arizona, which is chock full of short-term rentals. It's like Palm Springs. It's just, I think there's like 3,000 short-term rentals there. And there's only 10,000 permanent residents. Like the amount of people that it is forced out, that short-term rentals are forced out because they could make so much money is mind-boggling. And the really good short-term rentals, they do have an aspect of hospitality, but I feel like that's primarily on the pre-arrival side of things. It's that pre-communication. Do you have what you need? What are you planning on doing while you're? It's almost more like concierge service. But I think the experience itself for a short-term rental, it's going to be the same. You rent a room, you rent a house or whatever. It's got towels, it's got dishes, it's got a kitchen, it's got a pool, whatever. And like, okay, it's yours for the week. But there's not going to be many additions to hospitality or hospitality technology that will benefit you. There will be additions like, cigarette smoke detectors and occupancy sensors and things like that. But it's not going to make your stay better. It's just going to help them manage the operation, I feel.
Trend of a lot of hotel GMs frustrated and deciding to open their own STR businesses. And that is just clicking me in. Well, if hospitality businesses are struggling to hire people, and the people that are working hospitality business decided to open the STRs, where is this going? Is that going to get to a mix at some point? Because in the end of the day, hospitality or not, is the tourism business, right? We are providing accommodation to people that are traveling. So just an idea, just a question that I really genuinely had, and I throw that back to you.
Yeah. You're right. There's definitely a lot of really talented people who have been in traditional lodging and such who have made the move into short-term rentals. The one that comes to mind, and it's funny because I feel like I know him, but I don't think he would remember me. But there's a gentleman named Adam Knight who used to be with Fairmont. I can't think of the name of his company now, but he's back in the Pacific Northwest. And, he does, if I'm remembering right, he does short-term rental management. He's got a podcast. He's a really smart guy, but he made the move into short-term rentals as well as, I think he's also doing traditional hospitality management. And Adam, if I got any of this wrong, I apologize. Because we both work for Fairmont, we have this network of similar people and overlap, but we actually haven't chatted too much. But I've been LinkedIn stalking you for years because I respect you, and I always heard good things about you. But we have people like him who have made the transition into there, and not speaking to Adam specifically, but I think a lot of it is you have people in hospitality who are really good operators, but their hands are a little bit tied by owners. Like, well, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to have a good company. It's going to be efficient. It's going to do well. It's going to take care of the owners of these properties. If you're basically a third-party management company for STRs, instead of purchasing your own, I'm going to make sure the guests have a great time. But it's a little bit different because, again, at least my experience in short-term rentals, you get pinged by the host the day after you check in, and otherwise they're like, hey, let me know if you need anything. But it's not a real two-way back and forth type relationship like you might have at a hotel. But you have people in traditional lodging who are like, I know what hospitality is. I know how to translate it into STRs, and I'm going to do that. But I also think that's a relatively small percentage of the STRs out there. Like a lot of STRs are just, essentially literally mom and pops who were able to pick up another property, or they rent it out while they're on vacation or something like that. And they're not really hospitality professionals. A friend of ours runs some STRs up in Sedona, and she's not a hospitality professional, but she's very much how to put it? She's an entertainer. I don't know quite how to put it. It's like if you go to a birthday party that she throws, it's really cool. And if you stay at one of her short-term rentals, she does the fresh baked bread, right before you get there with the bread maker in the room. So you walk in and there's a freshly baked loaf of bread and it smells amazing. Just all these little touches that make it stand out from someone who's just I just threw my extra room up on Airbnb. Here's the key.
A hospitality person, right?
Oh, for sure.
Good. Well, awesome chatting to you. How can our audience get in touch with you and learn more about AG Hospitality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, we've got a website, ag-hospitality.com. You can write to me. It's bill at ag-hospitality.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. Yeah, we're, like I said, I got into hospitality because I like helping people, and everyone that I work with, everyone on our team is the same way. We're motivated by making sure that at the end of the day, you, your staff, your owners are happy. If you think that there's something that we can help you with, please reach out. We'd love to. Because, one of the other things I really like about being a consultant is I get to kind of be part of a team in all these different cool properties all over the country, all over the world, because we're international. I'm not just tied to one cool property. I get to see all these other ones. We've got clients in wine country in Sonoma. We've got clients in Mexico City. We've got clients in the Poconos, the Rockies, all over the place. And it's this is cool. I'd like to stay here. I would like to see this. I would like to be part of it. So anyway, slight digression, but yeah, reach out to us. We can, like I said, we can help with everything. We've got a lot of experience, a lot of connections, but we do a lot of the client-side project management. So if you're looking to change systems, if you're looking at some upcoming renewal dates and you just want to chat, happy to chat. The metaphysical, the virtual door is always open. So please reach out. We'll talk to you.
The notes, all your links on the notes as well. And I really appreciate your time. We appreciate your sharing your stories and your knowledge here. I hope that our audience will get a lot and learn something new today. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Mauricio. Bye, everyone.
time. Bye.
Bye.